My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm 47 years old, and this is the story of the night I realized my own daughter no longer saw me as a mother, but as a joke. It was her 21st birthday, a milestone that was supposed to be filled with love, family, and celebration. Instead, it became the night that shattered whatever fragile bond we still had left. One sentence from her lips, spoken so casually in front of her friends, cut deeper than any blade could. And in that moment, I knew something inside me would never be the same. White right pointing backhand index before I share what happened next. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more true stories like mine. The party was held at a cozy restaurant downtown, one of those places with dim lighting, brick walls, and cheerful waitstaff rushing between tables. I had spent weeks preparing for it. Even though she hadn't invited me directly, my sister had slipped me the details, whispering, "She'll be mad if you show up unannounced, but you're still her mother. You can't just not go." That tugged at me, the reminder that no matter how strained things had been, I still carried the title Mom. So I wrapped her favorite perfume in gold paper, tied a ribbon around it, and convinced myself that maybe, just maybe, tonight could be a fresh start. When I walked in, the music was already buzzing. A group of her college friends filled the long table in the center, raising glasses, their laughter ringing out like bells. My daughter, Megan, sat at the head of it all, glowing in a new dress, her hair curled in waves. For a second, my heart swelled with pride. She was beautiful, confident, alive. But when her eyes landed on me, the warmth drained. "Oh," she said flatly, "you came." Her words weren't loud, but the way her friends glanced at each other, some even smirking, made me feel like I'd just barged into the wrong room. I smiled anyway, forcing my voice to stay steady. "Of course I came, sweetheart. It's your big day." I placed the gift beside her plate, and she didn't even touch it. Just sipped from her drink, eyes already sliding back to the boy beside her, who leaned in close as if he belonged more than I did. The night carried on in fragments. I tried to join conversations, but the circle never widened enough for me. Someone would laugh, the table would roar, and I'd sit there pretending to get the joke even though no one bothered to explain. The waiter asked if I wanted wine. I shook my head, sticking to water, afraid that one wrong move would give her another reason to sneer at me. Then the cake arrived, chocolate-layered with buttercream, candles flickering as everyone clapped. "Make a wish, Megan," her friends chorused. She leaned forward, her eyes glinting. For a heartbeat, I thought she might wish for success, or love, or something silly like unlimited vacations. But she smiked, looked straight at me, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "My wish is that my mom would finally stop trying to be part of my life." Laughter erupted. Some of her friends clapped harder, thinking it was a joke. But it wasn't. Her voice was sharp, her eyes cold. She blew out the candles, and I swear it felt like she blew me out with them. The room blurred for a moment. My throat tightened, but I swallowed the sting of tears. I forced my lips into what I hoped looked like a smile, though inside, I was unraveling. "Well," I said softly, "that's one way to celebrate." Nobody heard me over the chatter. I sat there for a few more minutes, staring at the gift I had brought. She never unwrapped it, never even slid it toward herself. It sat on the table like a forgotten thing, as if my effort meant nothing. Finally, I stood, smoothing down my jacket, telling myself I needed some air. No one stopped me. As I walked out of the restaurant, the cold night air slapped against my cheeks, and only then did the tears fall. I leaned against the brick wall, clutching my purse so tightly my knuckles went white. That single sentence, "I wish my mom would stop trying to be part of my life," echoed over and over, louder than the city sounds around me. I thought back to the years when she was small, when she used to run into my arms after school, hair messy, backpack bouncing, shouting, "Mommy, guess what?" How did we get here? How did the little girl who once begged me never to leave her side grow into this young woman who wanted me gone? I pulled out my phone, staring at her contact picture, A photo I had taken years ago, her cheeks smeared with ice cream, her smile wide and unguarded. I wanted to call, to scream, to beg, to do anything but stand there in silence. But I didn't. I slid the phone back into my bag and forced myself to walk to my car. Driving home, every red light felt like an eternity. My chest was heavy, my mind racing. Did she really mean it? Or was it just the liquor and the laughter talking? But deep down, I knew the truth. People's real feelings slip out in moments like that. When I finally reached home, I sat in the driveway for nearly an hour, engine off, staring at the dark windows. The house felt lonelier than ever, walls that once held family dinners and birthday balloons now only echoing with silence. I whispered aloud, though no one could hear, "Happy birthday, Megan. I hope you got your wish." That night, I didn't sleep. I replayed every word, every look, every small humiliation from the dinner. And somewhere between the ticking of the clock and the rising of the sun, something hardened inside me. I realized that no matter how much love I poured out, no matter how hard I tried, she had made her choice. And that choice pushed me toward making one of my own. I sat there at the empty dining table long after the cake was cleared away, staring at the faint ring her glass had left on the wood. My daughter's words kept echoing in my ears. The best gift would be if you disappeared from my life. It wasn't just the sharpness of the sentence that cut through me. It was the ease in her tone, as if she'd been waiting years to finally say it out loud. My chest tightened, and I could feel the weight of memories pressing in on me, memories I had worked so hard to keep buried. The truth is, her words weren't born out of thin air. They were rooted in years of cracks, misunderstandings, and hurts that had never truly healed. I could almost see those old moments parading before me, each one sharper now in the silence of that evening. The first memory that hit me was of her 16th birthday. Back then, I was juggling 2 jobs, working at the local grocery store in the mornings and cleaning houses at night. I wanted to give her a special celebration, something more than the thrift store clothes and secondhand books she was used to. But that night, I came home late, still smelling of bleach and sweat, only to find her sitting on the porch steps with her friends. She looked at me with disappointment burning in her eyes. Her cake had melted in the summer heat, her friends were whispering behind her, and I could see it written all over her face. She thought I had chosen work over her. I tried to explain that I was doing it for her, that the extra shift meant she could have driving lessons that fall. But to a 16-year-old, all she saw was a mother who didn't show up on time. That disappointment became a seed, and I knew it had grown roots deep inside her heart. Another wound came from the day her father walked out. She was 12, sitting cross-legged on the living room rug, braiding her doll's hair, when he told us he was leaving. He didn't even look at her. He just muttered something about needing space and walked out with a suitcase. She didn't cry then, not in front of him. But the moment the door clicked shut, she dropped that doll and clung to me, shaking so hard I thought her ribs might snap. From that day on, I had to carry both roles. I tried to be her rock, but in doing so, I became harder, stricter, less forgiving. And she, instead of clinging to me, began pushing me away little by little. I leaned back in my chair, closing my eyes, trying not to drown in the flood of regret. My mind drifted to one of our worst fights, junior year of high school, the day I found cigarettes in her backpack. My voice had thundered across the kitchen, my hand gripping the pack like it was proof of my own failure. She had screamed back at me, accusing me of being too controlling, too blind to see her pain. The words she spat at me that day weren't as sharp as what she said on her birthday, but they cut just as deep. You don't understand me. You never will. I never forgot that. Maybe she was right. It wasn't just the big moments that left scars. It was the small, quiet ones too. The times I brushed her off when she wanted to talk because I was too tired from work. The nights I told her to focus on her homework instead of asking about the boy who broke her heart. The mornings I left early before she woke, leaving her cereal on the counter but no hug to start her day. At the time, I thought I was doing what needed to be done to keep us afloat. But looking back now, I wonder if those were the very things that pushed us further apart. The sound of the old clock in the hallway snapped me back to the present. The house was silent now, but the silence didn't feel peaceful. It felt accusing. I ran my fingers over the table's edge, thinking about how many meals we'd shared there, how many conversations had started and ended at that very spot. And yet, despite all of it, she had looked me in the eye and wished me gone. I thought about the years she spent resenting me for not giving her the life she thought she deserved. The weight of those old wounds wasn't just on her shoulders, it was crushing me too. I had lived every day trying to protect her, but somehow, in protecting her, I had hurt her in ways I couldn't fix. The hardest part was admitting that maybe she had a right to feel the way she did. She carried anger from her father's absence, disappointment from my shortcomings, and resentment for all the times I couldn't be the mother she needed. I had scars too, but I wore them quietly. Hers had festered, growing darker with time. I whispered to the empty room, I tried, baby. I really tried. My voice cracked on the last word, the silence swallowing my confession whole. The longer I sat there, the more the old wounds tangled with fresh ones. I thought about the way she looked at me that evening, her jaw set, her eyes cold. It wasn't the face of a little girl hurt by her mother. It was the face of a woman hardened by years of bitterness. And I couldn't help but wonder if I was the one who forged that hardness. I stood and walked to the hallway mirror, catching my own reflection. I barely recognized the woman staring back. My hair was streaked with gray, my eyes carried lines etched by sleepless nights, and my shoulders slumped with invisible weight. I pressed my palm to the glass, as if I could reach through it and grab the younger version of me, the one who still believed she could hold everything together. But she was gone, just like the little girl who once braided her doll's hair on our living room rug. The weight of old wounds doesn't announce itself all at once. It creeps in slowly, year after year, until you're carrying so much you can hardly breathe. And that night, sitting in the shadows of our dining room, I realized how heavy it had truly become. My daughter's words weren't just a cruel birthday wish. They were the culmination of years of fractures, unspoken hurt, and the chasm that had grown between us. And yet, as much as those words shattered me, a part of me knew this wasn't the end of our story. Something inside me stirred, a faint, dangerous whisper, that the past wasn't finished with either of us. That whisper inside me, quiet but insistent, pulled me toward the one truth I had carried like a locked box buried deep in my chest. My daughter thought she knew every reason for the cracks in our relationship, every disappointment, every absence. But there was one thing she didn't know, something I had guarded fiercely, convinced that telling her would only ruin what little we had left. I moved through the dim house like a ghost, my fingers grazing the walls as if touching them could anchor me in the present. The secret pressed harder against me now, louder than the silence of the night. I paused at the hallway closet and opened the door. There, tucked in an old shoe box beneath folded quilts, lay the envelope. Yellowed edges, faded ink, but its contents had the power to break everything open. I pulled it out and sat on the floor, the wood cold against my legs. My hands trembled as I slid the papers free. The top one was a letter, written in my own handwriting nearly 20 years ago. I had never given it to her. I had written it the week her father left, desperate to explain what had really happened that night. But I never found the courage. The letter told the truth. He hadn't left because he needed space. He had left because of me. I remembered the argument clearly, the words slamming between us like doors in a storm. He had accused me of being too controlling, too consumed with holding everything together, too unwilling to forgive his mistakes. And then, in his anger, he shouted something he could never take back. He didn't want the responsibility of raising her. Those words broke me in half. So I lied. I told her he needed space. I painted him as weak, not cruel. I thought I was protecting her, but in reality, I was protecting myself too. Protecting her from knowing she wasn't wanted. As I stared at the letter now, my chest felt like it was caving in. All these years, she had carried resentment toward me for being too hard, too strict, too absent, and she never knew the truth that might have softened it all. She never knew that behind my iron exterior was the terror of raising her alone, the constant fear she'd see through me and realize I wasn't enough. I pressed the paper to my lips, closing my eyes. The secret wasn't just about him leaving. There was more. There was the night I almost lost everything, her included. She was only 5 then, running a fever that shot up so high I panicked. I carried her to the hospital in my arms, barefoot, with nothing but a blanket wrapped around her. The doctor asked where her father was, and I lied again. I said he was working late. I said he'd be there soon. But he wasn't coming, and I knew it. That night, I signed papers I didn't understand, whispered prayers I wasn't sure anyone was listening to, and promised myself I'd never let her see how scared I was. When she finally stabilized, I sat in the plastic chair by her bed, clutching her tiny hand, vowing I'd be her shield no matter what. That vow became my secret burden, one I never told her, because I didn't want her to know how close she had come to being left with no one. My throat tightened as another memory crept in, the night I sold my wedding ring. She was 8, begging me for a class trip I couldn't afford. I remember sitting at the pawn shop counter, sliding that ring across the glass, pretending I didn't care. She thought the trip had been paid for by a work bonus. I never told her the truth, that I sacrificed the last piece of a broken marriage just to see her smile when she boarded that bus. The secret was in all those small sacrifices, hidden beneath layers of strength I forced myself to wear. She saw only the hardness, never the cost. I tucked the letter back into the envelope, hugging it against my chest. My breath came out shaky, uneven. The weight of this secret wasn't just about the lies I told. It was about the years I allowed her to believe I didn't care enough, when in reality, I cared so much it consumed me. Suddenly, the floor creaked above me. I froze, my heart lurching. Her room. She must have been pacing, maybe replaying the same argument in her head. For a moment, I almost climbed the stairs, envelope in hand, ready to pour out everything I had hidden. But fear rooted me to the floor. What if the truth didn't heal? What if it only confirmed what she already believed? That I had failed her, not once, but for decades. I pressed my forehead against my knees, whispering to the shadows, if she knew, would it change anything? The question hung in the air, unanswered. The truth was, I didn't keep the secret only for her. I kept it for myself. Because saying it out loud meant reliving it all. His rejection, my fear, the nights I cried into pillows so she wouldn't hear. It meant tearing open wounds that had barely scarred over. But now, after her words tonight, the secret no longer felt protective. It felt poisonous, like it was the very wall standing between us. The clock chimed softly in the hall. Midnight. I gathered the papers and slid them back into the box, shoving it under the quilts again. My hands lingered on the fabric, as if covering it could make the memories stay quiet a little longer. Then, from upstairs, I heard the faintest sound, a door clicking shut. Her door. Maybe she'd stepped into the hallway and heard me moving. Maybe she wondered what I was doing awake. Maybe she didn't care. But I cared. My chest ached with it. I rose, unsteady, and walked back toward the dining table. Sitting down again, I looked at the chair she had occupied earlier, where she had delivered those words like a final verdict. My fingers curled against the wood. I whispered into the stillness, one day, you'll know. One day, I'll find the courage. But tonight was not that day. Tonight, the secret stayed mine. And as I sat there, the house silent around me, the weight of what I'd hidden pressed harder than ever. The truth had claws, and it wasn't going to let me go. The house had settled into that unsettling kind of silence where every creak of the wood seemed louder, every gust of wind against the windows more pronounced. I remained in the chair, my body heavy as though nailed to the floor, my mind tangled in thoughts I couldn't untangle. My hands were still pressed against the table, the ghost of her presence lingering in the empty chair across from me. Then came the knock. It wasn't gentle or tentative. It was sharp, deliberate, a sound that cut through the quiet like a blade. I froze. For a moment, I thought I'd imagined it, but then it came again, louder this time, 3 firm raps against the front door. My pulse quickened, beating in my ears as I pushed back the chair and rose, each step toward the hallway heavier than the last. Through the glass panel beside the door, I saw the outline of 2 figures. Not neighbors, not friends. The glint of badges under the porch light stole the breath from my chest. When I opened the door, the night air rushed in, cold and biting. 2 officers stood there, one older with tired eyes, the other younger, stiff, his jaw set like stone. The older one spoke first. He said, voice low but firm, we need to ask you to come with us. My throat closed. What is this about? The younger officer shifted, pulling a folded paper from his pocket. We have a warrant for your arrest. For a moment, the words didn't register. Arrest. Warrant. They didn't belong to me. They belonged to someone else's life. Someone else's mistakes. There has to be some mistake, I whispered, my voice breaking. But the paper was already in my hands, the black ink spelling out my name as clearly as if I had written it myself. Behind me, the floor creaked. I turned, and there she was, my daughter, standing at the top of the stairs, her hand clutching the railing. Her hair fell loose around her face, her eyes wide, reflecting the flashing lights from the patrol car parked outside. Mom! Her voice was small, frightened, but sharp with disbelief. I shook my head instinctively, as if the gesture alone could erase what she was seeing. Go back to your room, I said, though my voice lacked the authority it once carried. What's happening? She pressed, her voice rising. The younger officer cleared his throat. Please, we need you to come quietly. I felt the heat rising in my chest, shame burning hotter than fear. Quietly, I repeated under my breath, glancing back at her. How could this be quiet when her eyes were cutting straight through me? The officers stepped inside, their presence filling the narrow hallway with a weight that made the walls seem closer. My daughter descended the stairs slowly, her hand still tight on the railing, her gaze never leaving me. Tell me this isn't real, she said, her words trembling. I wanted to tell her it was a misunderstanding, that they had the wrong person, that in 5 minutes they'd be gone and everything would go back to the fragile normal we'd been clinging to. But the letter in the closet, the lies I had woven for years, they pressed against me now, daring me to keep lying. Please, I whispered to the officers, my voice catching, not in front of her. The older officer softened, his eyes flicking toward my daughter, then back to me. He nodded slightly, but the handcuffs still gleamed in his grip. When the cold metal closed around my wrists, she gasped. The sound cut me deeper than the cuffs ever could. Why are you doing this to her? She cried out, her voice cracking. The younger officer straightened, his tone clipped. Is being taken in for questioning related to financial misconduct. The words rang in the air like a verdict. My daughter blinked, confusion spreading across her face. Financial, what? What does that even mean? Her eyes darted back to me, searching for an answer I couldn't give. Not here. Not like this. The walk to the patrol car felt endless, every step dragging the weight of her stare against my back. The night air stung my cheeks, carrying the faint scent of damp leaves and exhaust fumes. Neighbors' curtains shifted as shadows moved behind them, silent witnesses to my humiliation. Keep your head down, the younger officer muttered, guiding me toward the open door of the car. But I couldn't. My gaze was locked on her, standing barefoot in the doorway, her arms wrapped around herself, her face pale under the porch light. She looked like the little girl I once carried through hospital doors, fragile and breakable, except now her eyes held questions I couldn't bear to answer. Inside the car, the seat was cold against my legs, the cuffs biting into my wrists as the door shut with a heavy thud. The sound echoed in my chest like a final seal. Through the glass, I saw her take a step forward, then stop, her hand lifting slightly as if she wanted to reach out but couldn't. The porch light flickered above her, casting her shadow long across the driveway. Mom! She shouted, her voice raw, desperate. The engine started. The car began to move. And still, I couldn't find the words to tell her the truth. The city blurred past the window, neon signs smearing into streaks of color, streetlights glowing like watchful eyes. My mind raced, a storm of guilt, fear, and anger crashing together. Financial misconduct. That's what they had called it. As if those words could reduce years of survival, sacrifices, and choices made in desperation into a single crime. The older officer's voice broke through my thoughts. It doesn't have to go this way. Cooperate, and maybe it'll work in your favor. I turned my head slowly, my voice low. You think I don't know that? He studied me for a moment, then sighed, looking out the windshield. But all I could think about was her face, the disbelief, the hurt, the way she had clutched the railing as though it were the only thing holding her up. The secret I had kept for so long, the truth about why her father left, about the sacrifices I had buried in silence, none of it mattered now. Because what she saw was her mother being taken away in handcuffs, and no explanation in the world could erase that image. And as the siren wailed in the distance, slicing through the night, I realized this arrest wasn't just mine. It was hers too. The siren's wail had barely faded when the car stopped in front of the precinct, its floodlights washing the building in an unforgiving glow. The older officer opened my door, his hand guiding me out as though I might collapse. The cuffs dug deeper into my wrists, a constant reminder of the choices I had made. Inside, the air smelled of stale coffee and disinfectant. Phones rang. Papers shuffled. A man behind the desk glanced at me, raised an eyebrow, and scribbled something on a form. I was led past him, down a narrow hallway, until we reached a small room with grey walls and a metal table bolted to the floor. The officers removed the cuffs, but the weight around my wrists remained, invisible but heavy. "Sit tight," the older one said, his voice almost kind. Then the door shut, and I was alone. Minutes blurred into an hour. My thoughts were jagged, spiraling back to the porch light, to my daughter's voice breaking as she called after me. I pressed my palms against the cool metal table, trying to steady myself, but the silence of the room made every memory louder. When the door finally opened, it wasn't the officers who stepped in. It was her, my daughter. Her eyes were red, her cheeks pale, but she stood tall, her chin trembling with the effort to hold herself together. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us thickened with everything unsaid. "Why?" she asked at last, her voice raw. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" The words landed heavier than the arrest itself. I swallowed hard, my throat dry, because I thought I was protecting you. Protecting me. She gave a short, bitter laugh. "You think watching my mom dragged away in handcuffs is protection?" Her voice cracked, and I flinched as though struck. "I didn't want you to see the world the way I had to see it," I whispered. "The nights I spent covering debts, the lies I told just to keep food on the table, it wasn't a life for you. I wanted you to believe we were okay, even when we weren't." She shook her head, stepping closer. "So instead of trusting me with the truth, you left me with nothing but questions. Do you have any idea what that feels like?" Her words pierced me deeper than any accusation. The door creaked, and a man in a suit entered, my lawyer, summoned at the last moment by a friend who still believed in me. He set his briefcase on the table, adjusted his tie, and glanced between us. "You both need to talk," he said quietly. "But understand this, what you say here matters. Once it's out, there's no taking it back." He stepped aside, leaning against the wall, letting the silence hang again. My daughter's eyes searched mine, desperate for answers. "So tell me," she said. "Tell me what you've been hiding all this time." I drew in a shaky breath. "Your father didn't leave because of you," I began slowly, the words dragging out of me like stones pulled from the ground. "He left because of me, because of the choices I made." Her brow furrowed, confusion mixing with anger. "Years ago, before you were old enough to understand, I signed papers I shouldn't have. I thought I was saving us, keeping the house, keeping food on the table. But those papers tied me to debts that weren't mine. When the collectors came, I panicked. I moved money around. I hid accounts. I crossed lines I swore I never would. Tears welled in her eyes, but she stayed silent, listening. Your father begged me to come clean, I continued, my voice breaking. He wanted to face it head on, but I couldn't. I was too afraid of losing everything. So he left. Not because he didn't love you, but because he couldn't watch me destroy myself. Her lips trembled, the truth unraveling years of doubt. I thought he didn't care about us, she whispered, her voice cracking. No, I said firmly, leaning forward. He cared too much. He thought leaving would shield you from what I was becoming. But instead, it left you with only half the story. Her shoulders shook as tears streamed freely now. Why didn't you just tell me? Why keep all of this locked away? Because shame is louder than reason, I admitted, my hands trembling on the table. Every day, I told myself I'd confess. Every day, I found a new excuse. Until tonight, when there were no excuses left. For the first time, she didn't look like a child standing across from me. She looked like someone carrying the weight of two worlds, the one I built out of lies and the one crumbling around us now. She wiped her face with her sleeve, her breath unsteady. So what happens now? Before I could answer, my lawyer spoke for the first time. Now, he said, his tone steady but grave, we fight. The charges won't disappear overnight, but truth has a way of changing how people see a story. And sometimes, that's enough to start turning the tide. My daughter looked at him, then back at me. Her eyes softened, just barely. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full. Full of pain, full of questions, but also full of something that hadn't been there before. Honesty. I reached across the table, my hand trembling. For a moment, she didn't move. Then slowly, hesitantly, she placed her hand in mine. Her voice was barely above a whisper. No more secrets. I nodded, tears spilling freely now. No more. And for the first time in years, the weight on my chest lifted, not because everything was fixed, but because the truth was finally out, and it belonged to both of us now. That night, as the lawyer left us alone for a final moment, my daughter leaned closer, her voice steadier than I expected. We'll get through this, she said. Not because it's easy, but because it's real. Her words wrapped around me like a lifeline, fragile but unbreakable. The truth had cost me everything, my freedom, my reputation, the life I had tried so desperately to hold together. But in that room, with her hand in mine, I realized it had also given me something back. Something I thought I had lost forever. Her trust.